Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, we've got people kind of streaming in, and I'm sure we'll have a few more joining in the next couple of minutes, but we'll go ahead and get started because we've got a fantastic panel today. I'm Liz, and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are choosing a coding bootcamp.
And I'm Jess. I'm the content manager here at Course Report, and we're so happy to welcome you and our panelists today for this live Q&A. So all of our panelists are bootcamp alumni who graduated in the last year or so, and then they landed jobs as engineers. And we also have one data scientist.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump right in. I want to introduce everyone because we have a truly stacked panel, as you can see. Okay, so first up is Christina Moyer, who was a researcher in academia for 20 years before she attended Tech Elevator in 2020, and is now a software engineer at Path Robotics. Hey, Christina. And then we've got Hannah Mace, who was an artist assistant before attending Springboard in 2021, and now is a full stack software engineer at BugCrowd. Hey, Hannah. And then Logan Thies, who owned and operated a restaurant as he attended the part-time remote immersive at Codesmith in 2021. And now he works as a full stack software engineer with K2 Partnering Solutions at Facebook. Thanks for being here, Logan.
We're hoping to have Michelle Lee join us soon. Michelle was a personal trainer before she went to General Assembly in 2021 and is now a software engineer at InfoStretch. Jess Parker is here and worked in freelance graphic design before they went to Code Fellows in 2021 and now works as a software engineer at 40AU. And Michael Sender was a material scientist for 6 years before attending NYC Data Science Academy in 2020 and is now a data scientist at Anheuser-Busch. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And as you can see, these panelists are all career changers who actually landed new jobs in tech during a very tumultuous last 2 years. Going into today, Jess and I had a long list of our own questions, but we ended up getting so many fantastic questions from you, everyone who actually RSVP'd, that we decided to kind of ditch our original script, and we're going to focus instead on your questions today. So if you asked a question when you registered, we will pass those on to our panel and we'll continue to take your questions throughout. So just be sure to use the Q&A feature on YouTube Live, which should just be on the right-hand side of your screen throughout the live panel. And Jess, do you have a couple of questions for people to start thinking about?
Totally. So we'd love to kick off some questions here in the chat. So feel free to put your responses in. First question, where are you in the research process? Is there a question you have about how to choose the right bootcamp? Our second question is, what's your biggest worry about the job search as a bootcamp grad? And our last question is, what kind of job are you hoping to land when you graduate from a bootcamp? So like we said, just jot your answers down there in the chat.
Hopefully we'll give you some good insights into this. Our panelists will give you good insights into all of those questions as we go through this, but just to get your brains jogging. All right, wonderful. Well, let's kick off this Q&A with some questions about how you all actually researched and chose the right bootcamp. So Rich asked a great first question, one that Jess and I ask often. Why did you choose your particular bootcamp over all the others as you were researching? And everyone can take this. We'd love to hear from the entire panel on this question.
Happy to go first. So I was really I looked at a lot of different data science bootcamps. What attracted me the most to New York City Data Science Academy was that they focus entirely on data science. It's the only thing that they do. They're relatively small. They have a few different classes now, but they have one cohort per quarter for like their main data science bootcamp. And they had a few, before I joined, they had a few like intro sessions where you just get to know the teachers and instructors, et cetera. And there were a few that I even was really impressed by. So that's mainly what did it for me. Yeah, that they focused on data science, and it was relatively small, and I could meet the instructors before I joined up.
Yeah, and I can go next. Kind of piggybacking off of Mike, with Codesmith, they had, and I was kind of blessed, like the first, program I looked at was Codesmith, and I fell in love with it immediately. And so I didn't really do a lot of research on what other bootcamp programs there were. But the Codesmith offers these like introductory free workshops where you can participate and get an in-depth review of how certain aspects of code work. And it was just such an awe-inspiring sort of, I don't know, lecture, and the instructors were so great that I just kind of jumped in with both feet without looking at any other programs.
So for Springboard, I was really interested in the mentorship aspect. It's a like fully remote and self-paced 9-month program. You can finish it in probably like 6 months if you're doing it full time and you're not really like doing anything else. But once a week, you meet with a mentor who is like in working in the industry. And my mentor was someone who has worked with a lot of junior developers, and he gave me a lot of confidence. He gave me a lot of feedback. Like he could tell me exactly where in my code I needed to improve or what I was doing well. And we could just have conversations, like conversations that were bigger than what I was working on. And he's the one that told me, okay, you're ready to start applying for jobs. And that like totally gave me everything that I needed to go out there and get a job.
So I chose Tech Elevator for a number of reasons, which included the fantastic reviews from their alumni, all of which were 5 stars. Also, I attended an open house and I got to know how high their job placement rate was, and also their graduation rate. Both were in the 90s. And then I also learned about the Pathway program, which constitutes 50% of the program and is a career coaching, the career coaching aspect of the program. And I felt that I really needed that, having been in academia for decades.
I started out talking to a number of boot camps, and what really drew me to Code Fellows were their focus on what comes after the boot camp. I think that was something that really spoke to me. I went to college and got a degree, and it was always about, get the grades to go to college, get the scholarships to get to college, pay for it. But then people weren't having conversations about what comes after college and what comes next and what's the investment and the ROI down the road. And Code Fellows entered the conversation saying, let's talk about the boot camp, but let's talk about what you're envisioning after, and let's get you there. Let's see if we're a good fit. They do have a career accelerator program, which is like a mentorship program where they'll do resume reviews, they'll do one-on-one interview prep. And then on top of that, one thing that's really important to me, just as a woman coming into tech, is seeing representation. And Code Fellows was very upfront, very proactive about, hey, this is something that's really important to us. And not only are they just saying that, they're living it, because, my classrooms were my upper level classrooms, the women outnumbered the men. And that was a really interesting thing to see. And they have things in place like scholarships for diversity. And I just really was drawn to that. And then on top of that, just the alumni placements in places like Microsoft, and they're Seattle based. So they had a lot of those really big 5 connections. And I really wanted to leverage that as much as possible. I ended up really loving my time there. So I'm glad I did.
So Shaik asked, what did you do for bootcamp prep? And Minji asked us, how did you prepare yourself for your bootcamp's entrance exams, since so many of them have some kind of technical component? So I'm going to throw this question to Hannah. When you applied to Springboard, how did you prepare for that?
So I had already attended another boot camp at General Assembly, but my just entrance kind of mentality before going to anything was I did self-learn JavaScript. I worked on JavaScript programs and projects for about 6 months before I attended any boot camp. And I was using sources like Codecademy and, MDM Docs, W3 Schools, these just very approachable and kind of beginner friendly documentation. But in the beginning, it's a lot of repetition until you get comfortable, because it is so new. And so I was lucky that I already kind of had a little bit of the foundational knowledge, but that was something that I had to work towards.
And does anyone else from the panel want to throw in some of their favorite, especially free resources for people who are just starting to think about going to a boot camp?
Free code camp.
Did anyone do the like prep program at the boot camp itself? I know it sounds like a lot of y'all did the intro courses or some kind of class with the boot camp before you actually enrolled full time. Was that a big part of it?
Yeah, they had like a pre-curriculum to do, which I definitely completed before starting. I forget if that was before the test or not though. So.
That's cool. We just put a poll live, which anyone can take. It looks like the answer is 100% yes right now. But we asked, as you're researching boot camps, are you already teaching yourself how to code? And it seems like the answer is yes to that. And I think anyone here, did anyone just go into this completely cold, completely beginner? I'm going to assume the answer is no.
I did.
You did, Jess. Oh,
100%.
Oh,
I'd never
amazing.
did a day in my life ever. I think the most, and this is going to be like showing my age quite a bit. I think the most HTML I'd ever done was MySpace, changing the color of my MySpace just way back in the day. I did take, so Code Fellows, and I highly encourage this, regardless of if you go to Code Fellows or if that's on your list, they do offer a 1 day, it's like a day in the life of a boot camper in general. So it's how to learn remotely. They're going to teach you a little bit about code. They're going to get your computer spun up on some tools that you can use. That's not a full download, but it's going to help you simulate that atmosphere a little bit and see if that's maybe a good fit for you. And that's kind of what I did, is I hopped into one of those Saturdays and thought, you know, I hope I like this. And then it felt like something just like awoke. It was like a part of my brain woke up, and I got really pumped about it and wanted to look into it more. But yeah, I came in completely never having coded a day in my life, and I'm now working full-time in this industry. So it is possible. Code Fellows also doesn't have an entry exam. They really believe that they can take you from scratch. So that was something that interested me because I was a little intimidated by that.
Okay, that's super helpful. Well, I see Michelle just joined. Thanks so much for being here, Michelle. I'll just throw you one question before we hop into the next one, which is what we've asked everyone, which is just, why did you choose General Assembly in your research process? What stood out?
So with General Assembly, I love the process of getting to know that company on its own. Before I had enrolled, I had talked to the mission rep, and he was super honest, super open with me, had answered all the questions that I had, and was really realistic about, you know, the process of going into a boot camp and the process afterwards when you're job searching. And there was just a flow in the conversation that I had with him. So I was really happy that I ended up at General Assembly.
Okay, amazing. All right. So the next question that we got was around like language and curriculum. So Mike asked, how do I make the right choice when selecting which tech skill to learn? And so Jess, we'll throw this one to you. Now that you've graduated from Code Fellows and you're now an engineer, do you think that the programming language that you first learned was important?
Yes. So that's another thing that drew me in, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know about code. I didn't know about what the languages, which fields were best for which things. And there's even regional aspects of this. Different parts of the region kind of focus on different languages. So one thing that Code Fellows allowed me to do is it modularizes your language at your upper 4.1 level. So you can start out and learn the basics of JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and then as you familiarize yourself with the industry and you have these mentors, that allowed me to choose the language. You can choose Java, you can choose Python. I chose to do an actual deep dive into JavaScript. So we got into the really wonky stuff, the asynchronous deep dive, and I felt like I could have branched out, and going back, I might have, maybe I would go back and take a second language. But at the same time, I got to learn one at a really significant depth that I feel like I can hop over to a new language and learn it probably at that same level. So that was really, really nice.
And Mike, you went to NYC Data Science Academy. So kind of same question, were you looking for a curriculum that taught a specific language, I'm assuming Python or R since it was data science, or do you think that programming language was the most important part of your decision?
For data science, it seems like most of the field is primarily using Python these days. So I think I was, only looking at Bootcamp. I don't know of any Bootcamp that doesn't teach Python, but I probably wouldn't have considered one that didn't. I think, New York State Data Science Academy does both Python and R, which is unique. It wasn't a huge point for me to join, but it was helpful. I think the main thing was we just did everything sort of twice in the beginning. We would do it in Python, and then we would do sort of the same curriculum the next week in R. And it was a good way to actually cement a lot of the knowledge that we were learning, and learn a little more depth into what we're doing. So it was helpful. I think if anyone looking at data science bootcamps, probably Python is definitely the language you want to be primarily working in, probably.
Antonio asked, what are my chances percentage-wise of getting a job? So I'd love to know if any of you considered outcomes reports or CIRR, SEER reports, or even asked about the data around job placement at the schools that you ended up going to.
So when I went to the Tech Elevator open house, they were fully transparent about it. They gave a presentation and they gave the numbers. Like I said, graduation was in the 90s, job placement was in the 90s as well. So that was a factor for me. Yeah. But I don't think anyone can really tell him or her what their chances are, because it depends on if you do the work. But I can say this: if you go to Tech Elevator, you do the work and you trust the process, your chances are pretty damn high.
Tech Elevator, I know, is a part of CIRR, so they've got those reports, and so is Codesmith. And then I know a number of the other schools on this that are represented on this panel have their own jobs reports. Was that, did anyone else ask about that data as they were making their decision?
I definitely did too. Yeah, I forget the exact numbers that they had, but they gave me a percentage. And I know that they're also accredited, which was a big part of their process. So they are accredited by the state of New York as a professional development school, which they need to meet some numbers to be able to do.
Totally. I think NYC Data Science Academy actually just got ACCET accreditation too, very recently, probably not when you were there, Mike, but okay, very cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, that is one of the questions that we tell applicants to ask in the application process. Ask about this past job outcomes for past alumni, and then also to attend some kind of info session or intro class that the bootcamp is offering, just so you can get a sense of what that teaching style is like and what it actually feels like to be in the classroom. So sounds like everybody did those things, and that's fantastic. Okay, final question here. Did anyone receive any kind of workforce development funding or scholarships because of COVID-19, or use CARES Act funding? Any tips that you can give future boot campers about creative places to look for funding for tuition? This is a question we get a lot.
So I got funding, but it wasn't COVID related. I was awarded the Represent Tech Scholarship from Tech Elevator, which covered about 85% of my tuition. So this scholarship was established by Tech Elevator right before I started. It was part of their $1 million commitment to increase access to careers in tech for people from traditionally underrepresented groups. So that was really amazing.
That's incredible. I didn't realize it was 85%.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Did anyone else find interesting ways of covering tuition? It was kind of also a personal subject. You don't have to go into it, but.
I'm a military spouse, so I got to use the GI Bill. That was another benefit. But I will say that, just as a side note to any military spouse, veterans out there watching, especially military spouses, there is such a phenomenal push for military spouses in tech right now, because I think that a lot of people have woken up to the fact that you can take tech jobs with you when you PCS and when you get restationed. And so there are all of these resources out there. There are scholarships that people are throwing out for boot camps. And you really, if you're interested in it, the money is out there and it's there for the taking. You just have to dig a little bit, unfortunately, to find those resources. But if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I have that for you.
Really good advice. We just did a podcast also with Operation Code about VRAP and vet tech and the GI Bill, and all of those are available. So something to look into for sure.
Definitely. All right, so let's pivot into the bootcamp experience.
Oh wait, Jess, I have one other question from the chat
sorry.
that I'm seeing from Danielle.
Oh yeah.
Who says, concerned about finding work because I don't have any type of degree. Did anyone on this panel do the boot camp with no like undergraduate degree, or did everybody come into it with the bachelor's?
I'm an art school dropout. Like, I don't even have an art school degree and I have employment now. So it definitely, like, it's something that you should talk to with your advisor at the boot camp, because a lot of boot camps have a job placement guarantee. And that is depending on where you're located, like how well you do on your kind of entrance exams, you meeting certain metrics. But the general trend in the industry right now is that a degree is like not needed. And as long as you have kind of certain checks on your resume and you have projects and you can talk like with confidence about certain things, you do not need a degree. And even if a job posting says like bachelor required, you're not going to get in trouble for applying to that without a bachelor degree.
For sure.
Advice. Yeah.
Definitely the trend. On the other end of that, did anyone go into it with like a computer science degree?
I didn't have a computer science degree, but I had a pretty strong math and physics degree. But that being said, I think what was more important was like the program's focus on narrative and, like Hans said, confidence in what you're talking about, the projects you're working on, and relating sort of not necessarily your quote unquote actual work experience in an engineering field, but your functional work experience, right? So you may have a couple of years of actual functional experience because you've built applications from, you know, an empty file directory to a fully deployed application that someone could play with. And then how do you talk about that with confidence and also relate your other experiences in your life to sort of an engineering mindset, right? Maybe I owned a restaurant, but how do I translate the work I've done in a restaurant into an engineering workforce?
Mike, did you have something that you wanted to say as well?
Sure, yeah. I have a master's in applied math. I think the data science space is maybe slightly different than software engineering. What I wouldn't recommend trying to only use like a bootcamp experience in lieu of like any sort of graduate or undergraduate degree to try and get into the field. It seems to be more of a requirement, I think, generally to get into that space. I'm sure there are cases of people getting a job without it, but yeah, it seems like it's generally more of a requirement.
Definitely. Great. So yeah, let's dive into this bootcamp experience and what it was actually like for you. I'm assuming since you all attended a bootcamp in 2020 and then last year, 2021, I'm assuming that you all learned remotely. So Matthew asks, have you found the predominantly remote environment that exists today to be better or worse for your learning experience in the bootcamp? And how has it affected finding work afterwards? So Logan, I'd love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm full-time family parent. I have 3 kids, and trying to, most of the programs I was looking at, you know, they're full-time immersive. It was like 12 hours a day for 3 months. And then you get, you know, you graduate and you go out and find your job. With COVID and the whole culture of shifting into remote, that actually made my ability to make my career switch a possibility, because I could, you know, organize my home life and manage the time to fit in actually participating in the work. And then likewise afterwards, with getting the job, it's just made that family work-life balance so much more of a possibility. It's helped with like homeschooling kids during COVID. And I think just that whole shift, like I said, made it a reality for me.
Does anyone else want to jump in on this and how learning remotely and now working remotely, how that has worked for you?
I think that if you go to a boot camp that is kind of like 9 to 5 with a cohort, and you are working with other individuals in the same like place as you, and you guys are collaborating, and you're getting used to like GitHub branch management, and you're not having merge conflicts, or you're knowing how to deal with those types of things, that's actually really, really valuable when it comes to work. And that's a soft skill that you can use to sell yourself. Because there are definitely people that are going to be applying for the same jobs that do not have those skills. And so if you go to a boot camp that does allow you to interact with other people in your cohort and you're working on group projects together, that's something that is super, super valuable. And that's not something that like Springboard would supply to you, because Springboard is remote and self-paced and you're doing everything on your own. But other boot camps do have that.
Yeah, Michelle, do you want to weigh in here? Did you find it easy to connect to your instructors, mentors, other classmates in your cohort at General Assembly?
I would say yes, only because my cohort only had about 9 people, including myself. And so it was very close knit. I also had 2 instructors. And then on top of all this, I would highly suggest anyone who's thinking of enrolling into boot camps to really consider bringing up those as questions too. Asking how big your cohort's going to be, how many instructors you're going to have, how much of help is going to be provided after school hours. Yeah.
That's really good advice. No, that's really good advice, because as you can see just from this panel, like Springboard is asynchronous, self-paced, you get matched with a mentor. General Assembly, like you're probably doing that, live and actually like, joining a class at a specific time. I'm sure with the other, a lot of the other boot camps in this panel as well. So asking those questions up front, super smart. Very cool. All right, wonderful. Okay, well, I think someone mentioned final projects. Was anyone particularly proud of their final project or their group projects during the boot camp?
I can speak to saying that I definitely am. So at Codesmith, the final project that is premised on like designing a currently valued engineering solution to a problem that current engineers in the workforce are struggling with. And so we built a dev tool that's currently in production for a new state management library within React's ecosystem, and I'm still actively maintaining it to this day. And there's a lot of love that goes into something when you go into the engineering world, try to find a problem, and then develop a solution for it. And it's a valued solution. And you started it from research to an actual project implementation that's being used today. And I'm very fond of it.
One thing I liked
about brag
go
ahead, Mike.
Yeah, the New York City Data Science Academy had some partnerships with companies, real companies. And so our final projects, some of them, if you chose, could be with a real company. And so I think that was really valuable, because we were working on a project with real data from the company, and understood at least some of the context of like what it was going to be used for, which I think was a lot better to help like while talking through interviews than doing like a Kaggle project or something like that. So I find that really helpful.
We get a lot of questions from our readers, and I'm also seeing it here in the chat about career support and how boot camps are preparing their students for the job search. So I'd love to know, like, what was like the most impactful parts of the career curriculums at your boot camps? Michelle, if you want to kick this one off, and then we'll just kind of open it up after that.
The most impactful part definitely was being provided with a career coach during my time at GA. She would come in and check up on all of us and also set up one-on-ones weekly. She also helped us with setting up our resume, doing mock interviews, going through elevator pitch, really getting us comfortable to enter job search. And so that was one of the more important points of my time at GA.
Does anyone else? Oh, sorry, Logan.
Yeah, I was going to say I can speak to that. So I did the part-time program, and instead of 3 months, it's over a 9-month period. And CodeSmith dedicates the entire last third portion while you're wrapping up your projects in that career development portion. So you're working on resumes, you're doing, like probably with everyone else, you're doing tech interviews, you're doing system design interview prep, your resume is going through like 7 different iterations of revisions from different people, and then also like an actual hiring support team. But I also think what's really valuable with CodeSmith is that they have this continued alumni support for career development. So even after you land your first job and you're doing a career switch and you need guidance and advice and revising your resume or revising your narrative or salary negotiations. I think that was another big one, is going through like the actual act of negotiating salary, which is really important. There's still just a really connected support network and empathetic support network that I think was really valuable in helping me sort of build that confidence within myself to actually say, hey, yeah, this is my only engineering experience, but this is what I can offer.
Yeah, going along with that, if you don't mind me jumping in, one of the things that Code Fellows did that I was really grateful for, but also super intimidated by, is if you're new to tech, you may have heard the word whiteboard thrown out, and that's something that is unique to this industry. And we had at the upper level, we have an entire track every single day of the week for all of your 401, which is 10 weeks at the upper level. You do data structures and algorithms. You whiteboard in front of other people. You fail at it. You get better at it. You fail again. You fall on your face. You stare at the board in terror, and then they guide you through it. They give you feedback. They make you better. And to graduate Code Fellows, you actually have to pass a whiteboard in front of an instructor that is not your instructor. So it's not like your instructor who knows you. It is a brand new person who is, evaluating you. I really loved that they put such an emphasis on data structures and algorithms, because as someone who's coming from the arts background, just like, some of the other panelists here, not coming from a CS degree, it definitely made me stronger, and it made me more competitive with those people that are coming from that background. So, and we have the same alumni support. We also have been around so long, it's a kind of a cool full circle thing that some of our alumni are now hiring managers. They're senior devs, and it's probably once a day, twice a day in the alumni channel, somebody's dropping in a job lead. So it's a really active community, and I really, really enjoy that about it.
Yeah, we're not in like 2013 anymore. There are now thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of bootcamp grads, and a lot who are in positions of power in hiring, and it's really cool to see people evolve and grow. Did everybody do the job search and the kind of career prep remotely? Like, did any of your bootcamps move, say, your demo day or like your employer networking events? Like, did you do all of those online as well?
Yeah.
And found those to be effective, or, how did those go?
That's a good question. They actually, at the time, I did my boot camp the summer of 2020. So it was pretty soon after. I think it was like the second cohort that was remote. And they used to have a very big event where they would, the kind of a career fair type event, and they canceled that. And they didn't replace it until well after I graduated. And so I actually did miss that aspect of it. But the other career coaching and other things that they did remotely, I think worked out pretty well. And they did a pretty extensive network that they helped people get interviews and everything like that. But hopefully by now they had something to replace kind of that career fair that they were doing before. But at the time, I did miss out on that because it was remote.
All right, fantastic. Well, okay. So most of the questions that we got were around the job search and the actual career change and what you're doing now. So Matt asked a very popular question. How long did it take you to find a job after you completed the boot camp? And we'll let everyone weigh in here. But Christina, do you want to start?
Sure. I had 3 job offers by graduation day, and all 3 were from employers who came to Tech Elevator's matchmaking event.
Because I did 2 boot camps, like from my first boot camp, I was not getting offers. I was getting ghosted a lot. But then by the time I was like 2/3 of the way done with my second boot camp, I had already signed an offer. So it was like a year or not even finished with the boot camp, depending on how you look at it.
I TA'd after my cohorts. They keep on a student or 2 who was in the previous cohort to help with the next. So if you count TA as a job, then 0. But after that, after that 3 months TAing, I started looking for jobs after that. So it took me about a month and a half after that.
Yeah, and likewise, I did, they call it a fellowship with Coach Smith. And it was, during that fellowship that I was kind of actively looking around. I was more so just as soon as they polished my LinkedIn profile and that was up, it was just like recruiter after recruiter, maybe like 3 recruiters, 4 recruiters a week would email you and say, hey, got this job opportunity. And just out of like trying to develop and practice my interviewing skills, I was like, oh, sure. Yeah, I'll do an interview with you. And it was I did 2 fellowships, so 6 months, and about halfway through the second one of those recruiters and I connected on a level and it just happened. So it took about, not including the fellowship, about 4.5 months, but it was pretty common throughout each of the cohort. There's about 30 people in each cohort, and about 1/3 of them will probably have offers before graduation within that 2 to 3 week period. And then about 80% will have offers within the first month or 2 months afterwards.
Yeah, it was about 5 weeks for me, and I ended up getting 2 offers. It was kind of a unique experience because I got an offer from a UK development team. So it was like an international thing. And then I got an offer from a US company. The UK company had my heart because it was Warhammer, the makers of Warhammer, the game. Their dev team is amazing. So if you're interested in Warhammer, they're doing some really exciting things over there. Phenomenal team, highly recommend. My company is amazing. But I found myself in a situation where I'd never had to handle a competing offer, and I didn't know how to navigate that. I was really unsure, and I got to reach out to that alumni network and get some guidance on that, which was really cool. But typically, my other classmates work for Zillow now. We've got people at Microsoft. Another person got competing offers and ended up going with a healthcare tech startup, and his background was a personal trainer. So again, leveraging that, hey, I used to work in this industry, now I'm going to tech. That really, I didn't get hired because I know everything about code. I'm a junior. I'm a toddler with a machete, like hacking through code at this point as a junior. But I definitely got hired because I had those other skills that I could leverage. And I had this really positive bootcamp experience that prepped me in a lot of really great ways. So.
And along those lines, we would love to know what your
Wait,
sorry.
I just want to know how long did it take Michelle to get a job after graduating from General Assembly?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Michelle.
It took me about 2 months, roughly 2 months. By the 2-month mark, I had signed the offer, and then by 2.5 months, I was getting onboarded. But for everyone out there too, just because we're throwing out these numbers, like, be gentle with yourselves. It's going to be different person to person. And I think just as long as you keep going and you try, you're eventually just going to land at the company, and you're going to land in this role that you really enjoy. Yeah, I was going to say one other thing, but I completely forgot.
I think that's really good advice. Yeah, we're hearing, on average, we do an alumni outcomes and demographic survey every year. And, we see about 3 to 6 months it takes for the average boot camper to get hired after they graduate. And I think here we're seeing, 4.5 months, 3 months, 2 months, many job offers before you even graduate. There is definitely that spectrum. But when people say, like, how long does it take to go to a boot camp and get hired, we generally think like a month to apply, get accepted, choose your date, 3 to 4 months to take the boot camp, and then about 6 months, at the most to actually get hired afterwards. So I think that's really nice advice, Michelle. Okay, Jess, I'll stop interrupting.
Oh, no worries. Thank you for catching that. And Michelle, great point about like the right job will come to you. It's not necessarily about like how quickly can you get that. So yeah, we would just love to know sort of what your careers are looking like today. We know your job titles, but we'd love to know like a project or a sort of team that you're working on. So in just a few sentences. So let's start with Michelle. You're a software engineer at InfoStretch. So what kinds of things are you working on there?
So I had just wrapped up my first project. It was mobile development. So I ended up learning a lot of front end stuff, TypeScript, React Native. I was working with their menu management. And then after finishing that project, I am now on my second project, and it is very much back-end focused. So I am learning C#, .NET, web APIs, and things as such.
And Jess, you are a software engineer as well, and you are at 40AU. So what kinds of work are you doing there?
Yeah, so 40AU is a consultancy. So we really dabble in a lot. We do everything from social media to mobile applications. We've even done games for pet owners. We do a lot of web development. I'm on the web development team, so I do a lot of API integrations, especially payment integrations. I do a lot of front end work, but we also run our servers and, have a lot of legacy code come in. So I have to be really good about diving into that. And I got hired to write a language I didn't know. I got hired to write PHP. So the fact that I was able to just really dive in with this great foundation, I think speaks really well to, how much I felt comfortable being able to say, hey, I don't know this, but I will learn it, and PHP is interesting compared to JavaScript for sure. So, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
And Mike, you're a data scientist at Anheuser-Busch. So huge company. What are you working on there?
Yeah, I'm a part of the tech arm of Anheuser-Busch called Beer Tech. Started about a year ago. My team primarily is doing store segmentation. So essentially generating labels for all the places that sell beer right now in North America to help marketing and sales and the various business teams make decisions about, which stores to spend resources on or go to and things like that.
Cool. Christina, you're at Path Robotics as a software engineer. Really interested to know what you're doing at that company.
Yeah, so at Path, we develop technology that powers autonomous welding robots for the manufacturing industry. So these days, the team that I'm on is working on doing some refactors in the GUI and the API to improve our workflow and also make our application run better. And we're also adding some new functionality, which will allow our system to weld really, really big parts that have hundreds of features. So my team's called Team Big Part.
I love that. Hannah, you are a software engineer at BugCrowd, which I love this name. What are you doing at BugCrowd?
So BugCrowd is a cybersecurity company. And so I work on the platform team. And like Jess, their stack is like not what I learned. I am like a Python girl. I know JavaScript, and they do Ruby, Kotlin, Scala, like Go, all these other languages. So it was really like amazing to pass my interviews in a language that I literally had never touched before. And now I'm learning Kotlin. We're doing a lot of stuff with like machine learning and just dealing with a lot of like sensitive data. So it's really cool to learn, like I'm learning a little bit of hacking. I'm learning about like actual best practices for web application security, just that kind of stuff.
That's cool. And just a quick follow-up, are you going to get any kind of like cybersecurity or networking certification for your job?
I don't have to because I'm working with the platform, but like I could if I wanted to. I've worked with the director of cybersecurity to like do some like kind of simple cross-site scripting. I've like gone down that path a little bit. It's fun as like an extracurricular, but it's not necessarily where I want to go. But I also don't really know like where I want to end up yet. I'm just trying to like take it all in.
That's awesome. And Logan, you are a software engineer with K2 Partnering Solutions at Facebook, which I think is probably Meta now. So what are you working on these days?
So yeah, like all other, giant companies that have an enormous code base, they have a lot of, they have a whole internal ecosystem. So tools that teams within the teams kind of use to process their own information or their own data or protect their own data. And my team that I work on, processes applications between third parties. And so I work on, and similarly, like everyone else here, most of the work I learned was, React and that whole MERN stack, and Facebook obviously uses React, but PHP and GraphQL and Relay were all new technologies to me. So a lot, and those are the core technologies that they'll use on their internal tools.
Well, I think it's fascinating that pretty much everyone here has the job title software engineer, but if you just listen to the incredible spectrum of the projects that you're actually all working on, there's such a huge variance, which is really interesting. I've got, okay, so we'll move on in a second, but I've got a couple of questions from the audience that I just wanted to pepper in here. One is from Raul, who asks, any thoughts on freelancing web development? Did anyone think about going into freelancing or even do that after they graduated? Or how do we feel about that as a path?
We were advised against it at Tech Elevator since we would have just been too green.
I think that's a good point. And then actually Raul asked another question, which I think might be a bit of a maybe a misconception that we could debunk. He says, any concerns about web builders like Wix or Squarespace taking a huge percentage of jobs from web designers? Is that something that anyone has encountered in their job search? Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah. So I actually get paid to work with WordPress, and that has a bad rap and it has a stigma to it. But when you find out that WordPress is powering something like 40% of websites, it's an incredibly powerful tool. And I know that boot campers tend to train on the shiny new things, and so there is that stigma of diving into a website like that, like a CMS. As far as the Wix thing, people are always going to need plugins. They're always going to want to customize, and they can't necessarily code those things. And drag and drop only goes so far. The same with Bubble.io. I've recently dug into Bubble.io, which is exciting, but the whole code, no code movement, it's no code, but somebody has to code the no code in the background. So yeah, I don't think that we're going to be replaced anytime soon. I don't think that's anything to worry about.
And even with places like Shopify is like the same story where, yeah, like these people are buying packages, but if they want anything customized on their website, and if they want their website to look anything other than just like a Shopify site, they have an actual software engineer working on it, like, and they have to actually dig into the code, and it has its own process. And it can be something worth diving into if that's something that you like, because there is like a huge market on like Upwork and stuff for that specific skill set. But the like Jess said, like no code is only no code for so long. Like the code does come from somewhere.
Absolutely. Okay, that's a great distinction. Okay, so Chris asks, having gone through the tech interview process, do you have any suggestions about what we should focus on or train on outside of the boot camp? I think this is a fantastic question. Michelle, what would you suggest? Something that you didn't learn in the curriculum at General Assembly that you would suggest someone focus on?
So because my boot camp was an immersive program that was 3 months long, there wasn't too much of a heavy focus on data structure and algorithms, unfortunately. So definitely if you are not comfortable with DSA, I would heavily recommend going through that and going over it, making sure that you're comfortable explaining the problem at hand, and then being able to explain through your solution and your way of thinking. So using sites such as LeetCode, Algo Expert, and I think I used one other website, I can't think off the top of my head, that, and then coding along with different projects. So coding along with a friend that probably went through the same program with you, or someone else that's interested in coding, and looking up, code along projects on YouTube or Udemy, making sure that you're freshening up on technical skills or languages that you want to have a career in. So if it's front end, focusing on projects that really incorporate React Native, things like that.
So we got 2 questions about age from Angelica and Zoe. Their question was basically, can career changers over 40 find a job in tech after a boot camp? I'm just going to throw this out there. Does anyone want to jump in and have their response to this?
Yes, you can. I did. I was 42 when I went to boot camp. And I don't think I was even the oldest person in my cohort. Nobody cares how old you are. Can you do the work? Can you be comfortable being uncomfortable? That's all that matters. Do you have a passion for it? Age doesn't matter.
Absolutely agree.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Jess.
Oh yeah, no, I'm 35, so I absolutely agree with Christina. That was one of the first questions I asked to one of the mentors that came into Code Fellows is ageism a thing? Do I need to worry about it? Because I didn't know, and they were like, no, it may be, but typically not. And I have not. I've experienced 0%. So go for it.
All right, that is great advice. And okay, so one of our most popular questions, we ask this, Jess and I ask this of every alum that we interview, was the bootcamp worth it for you? And Iqbal in the registration asked, has the bootcamp's ROI worked out for you, the return on investment? And maybe, so you might think about this ROI in terms of salary or terms of quality of life, or just like liking your job more. But however you think about worth, maybe everyone can just go around and answer this one. Did you think that the bootcamp was worth the investment?
I would say 100%. Just not only the salary expectations being met, and it's still, for me, it's so new, and it's kind of like, I can't believe that this kind of salary comes with the type of work that I'm doing and the passion I have for the work. But even just the quality of life, being able to work in an industry that is capable of working remote is such a different, like, contrasting distinction from, say, working in a restaurant where you're on site all the time or on call all the time, working 7 days a week. Like, the quality of life is so much better with that ability to take my computer where I need to go, as long as I am able to stay connected. and stay connected with my family in that, right? So I would say it was 100% worth it for me. Plus, I really enjoy doing the work.
For me, I really wanted something that was like sustainable. Coming from, working with artists, I got to travel all over the world to do galleries and to work on like really cool fabrication for a million different things. And that was like a dream, but it wasn't something that was going to take me into my 40s and 50s and 60s. It wasn't something that was going to guarantee me like a good life that I could count on. It wasn't, putting money in my 401k. It wasn't doing anything that, as I became older and more mature, I realized were things that I actually needed to care about. I lived a great fun life in my 20s, and now that I'm getting into my 30s, I have different priorities, and this kind of job is way more in tune with the more adult, mature me.
Did anyone take a salary cut when they moved into tech? No, not in this group. Okay. I've talked to some people who went from like extremely high stress, highly paid jobs and got into tech, and that was kind of how they weighed their quality of life. But okay, cool. Sorry, Christina, you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, going to Tech Elevator was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It changed my life. For the second time in my life, I found a career that I'm passionate about. Salary expectations exceeded. I enjoy coming to work every day. I'm excited. There are problems to solve. And this is going to be what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, work-wise.
I definitely agree with Christina. Before becoming a software engineer, I was a personal trainer. So I had no technical background, no knowledge of really anything technical wise. And my job had required me to go in every day. And I loved interacting or working with people and helping other people. And so during COVID, making this career switch, it was definitely a lot, but my time at General Assembly was 100% worth it. Everyone that I met and everyone I still stay in contact with, and being able to do this line of work and being really passionate about continuing to learn and code in general, it's been really great.
And yeah, I'll echo what everyone else is saying. I was a material scientist in an R&D department for a big manufacturing company. I was sort of like working in a dark lab and under a hood alone for hours a day. Couldn't work remotely, was making less money, career advancement was tough. And so this career change has been, met my salary expectations, I work remotely, I interact with more people, just better in lots of different ways. Yeah, so very happy with my decision.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I hate to end on a negative note, but was there anything that we didn't like while you were attending the boot camp? And we got this question a couple of times, but like anything that could be improved, or even just advice to a future boot camper who's trying to make this decision, and something to point out?
Yeah, so for me, I'm very introverted, and so the networking aspect of the whole career search just like does not work for me. And how these boot camps, at least the ones that I have experience with, how they teach and approach networking does not work for me. I did not get any job offers from any of my networking, advances. What I think would probably work better is if there were people, and I think someone here from their boot camp experienced something like this, where there are alums who have jobs that they can offer. I didn't experience that in my boot camps, but I think it would maybe go better if there were specific people that could come in and could actually kind of help you, give more of a helping hand towards referrals and that type of thing. I mean, I reached out to a lot of alumni from both my boot camps, and no one ever would reach back out to me. And, I was like rewriting my paragraphs, and that kind of was the extent of the networking help in the career coaching. Was they would be like, oh, we'll try writing this instead, or try doing that instead. And it was all just like pretty fruitless. I got a couple job offers, and they were all from, scouring LinkedIn and AngelList and Dice and these actual job postings. It was never from a referral or from networking.
Anyone else? I know we're wrapping up, but any just advice as we wrap up to future boot campers, or anything to watch out for?
One thing I just want to address and acknowledge is, if you're a parent and you're going through boot camp, parent guilt is real, and it's okay. You're not going to be as present, for your kids. But you just have to kind of keep in mind why you're doing it, and they are part of the reason you're doing it. And it helps if you have support. I was lucky enough to have my mom come stay with us for 3 months to help us with our toddler. But yeah, so parent guilt is real. Acknowledge it, but it's okay.
I feel like we could do a full panel on going to a boot camp as a parent. Always incredibly impressed when we talk to boot camp grads who had young children as they were doing a boot camp. A lot of motivation there. Okay, anyone else want to weigh in before we wrap up? I know we're 2 minutes over our time. All right, fantastic. Well, this has been wonderful. I think it's a perfect place to end it. So thank you to everyone for tuning in, and Michelle, Hannah, Jess, Christina, Michael, Logan. We cannot thank you enough for being here, sharing all of your experiences. We will post this video on the blog on coursereport.com with a transcript very soon, and we'll send it to y'all in a follow-up email later today. So look out for that. And to everyone who joined, thank you so much for asking questions. This was fantastic. We're going to do more of these live Q&As soon. So let us know in the comments or email us at hello@coursereport.com and let us know if there's a specific topic that you want us to dive into. This was wonderful. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.